So knees right on top of the feet, bone on top of bone, vertebrae on top of vertebrae. Let the shoulder plane sit right on top of the uppermost rib. And include the vertebrae of the neck with the line of the spine. Release the abdomen. And now consciously put some space between the bones, whichever ones are easiest for your awareness to have a sense of. Eventually you want that to be everywhere. It might be the shoulder joints, one of the easiest ones to allow space in there and allow it to open, allow the distance between the bones to increase. And then try and do that with the spine. Imagining or feeling space between the vertebrae, and then intending, allowing that space to increase, to expand. As you breathe in a soft abdomen, each out breath is a releasing breath. So hanging out, weight falling through the skeleton into the ground, aware of the skeletal alignment, and now also aware of the space between bones. So with each out breath, see if you can release the abdomen a bit more, see if you can allow a little bit more space or be conscious, more conscious of some space between the bones. Eventually having a sense that you're standing with the spaces between the bones as much as the bones themselves. So those little cushions of air give the support and give the structure just as much as the bones. Allow that introduction of space between the vertebrae to inform and correct your posture, the line of the spine. Again, out breath, releasing, shoulder sitting all the way down. See if you can put some space in the hip joints. Even if that's just an intentional, imaginative thing, that will help on a small level, preventing compaction. You may relieve that compaction to at least to a small level. And hands over the center. Let the torso fill as you breathe in. Let it empty as you breathe out. And make sure the knees are a little bit bent as we go into hip circles. Imagine you're still hanging from the string, so your spine is dangling long as you do the hip circles. That also helps keep the lower back straight. The lower back is not straight, if it has that curve, there can be a tendency to kink or stress the lower back and or the hips. And now change your hip circles on the fly, change it to tailbone circles. So notice a slight difference in that movement as you change more specifically to tailbone circles. Good, okay, slowly hanging out to naturally come to a stillness. Send your mind the other way, hip circles, so big kind of the blocky part, the big blocky part of the hips, those go in circles. Notice and feel the rotation in the hip joints. And then refine that to tailbone circles. As you hang out and breathe. Soft abdomen. Accentuate the hanging out quality and notice and watch gravity bringing you back to natural, settled stillness. And in a moment or two, just release your hands and let them continue to swing, emphasizing the drop to keep the movement going. So not activating your biceps, your arms too much, emphasizing the falling, the dropping, and then there's enough momentum to keep things going. Again, knees directly over the feet, tailbone hanging, lower back straight, back to the neck straight. Consciously, completely release those shoulder joints. And sinking down for 3 swings, rising up for 3 swings. And as you go down, bending those knees further, keep them directly over the respective foot. And if you want to time the breathing, breathing in as you sink, breathe out as you rise. And then just hanging out and letting gravity naturally take those arms into stillness. And let's do a few arm drops. So slowly, slowly, arms get longer forward, longer forward. At some point, you release them as if you're cutting the strings. Slow, smooth flowing forward. And your own timing, complete drop. Again, challenge yourself to see how much you can truly let those arms go. Complete and true free fall. Each time is another opportunity to really let go. Go for 100% letting go. Let the shoulder joints open. Think of forward rather than up, and then a complete release. And same thing out to the sides, flowing out to the sides, thinking more to the sides more than up. At some point, complete release. Consciously releasing the abdomen. Again, enjoy that challenge of how much can I let go? How much can I allow? Just a true free drop. And then arms will cross in front, then the arm drop. Of course, the challenge here is to not do. Be a tendency to use the muscles somewhere in that arm swing, or maybe the muscles to bring the arms down. So just notice those tendencies. And each time is another opportunity to see if you can release and let go of those tendencies. One little pointer I might mention is when the arms drop initially here, remind yourself to really let the shoulders completely drop too. The shoulders may have crept up just a tiny bit as you as those arms floated up. May have crept up a little bit, and then you'll tend to keep them up for the swing. So when you let those arms initially go, even physically, mechanically drop those shoulders. And that will really add to the quality of that free swing. Dropping those shoulders as you release the arms. Nice, good breathing, abdominal breathing. Knees repelled away from each other, directly over the respective foot. Back of the neck, lower back, flat. And then add a turn. Make sure your knees have a nice good bend to them. One turn to start with, and then one turn the other direction. Again, same idea with those shoulders. Notice what's happening with them. And even physically, mechanically drop them as you release the arms. Let the weight exit through the feet. Back crown of the head is pointed straight up. Releasing the abdomen. And then if you want, you can do 2 turns. 1, 2, and then the arm drop. So 1 turn to each side. Press those shoulders down when you drop those arms. And then if you like, 4 turns, 2 to each side. It's okay if you lose track. No major repercussions, I'm sure. As long as you keep your knees bent and lower back flat. Now that we're doing more hip turns, about 4 turns, lots of more time doing the arm swing, gives you more time to really let go, to really let go to the flow of it. Let those swings just happen. Make sure those knees are bent, like a fairly good bend to them, and they're pointed straight forward. Now 3 hip turns to each side, or a total of 6 or more. So 6 or more hip turns. And you've got lots of time to really get into the swing of things, so to speak. Release, let go. When you do these on your own, good to go. 8, 12, 20, many swings. It may just be continuous and you may forego the arm drops. But even when you're doing the arm drops, it's good to have lots of swings in there between arm drops. And then that arm drop that finally happens will be really high quality, totally released. Now I'll let you finish that up whenever you finish those swings. And whenever you do finish, release the abdomen, hang out, hang the hip cage, the stretch spine. Allow the abdomen to inflate, to fill, and have that push your arms or buoy your arms forward. Expanding energy bubble inflates the arms in front of you into Buddha belly position. Check your alignment, knees, background of the head, shoulders sitting. And let the arms and hands settle a little bit back towards the body, but they can only go so far. They rest on that sphere. Notice if you have any pull in your lower back. I'm exaggerating a little bit, or my arms being out here, I'm pulling back these long muscles, or I'm angled slightly forward because of the weight in front. So you want to counter that not by pulling back and activating these muscles, but by tucking the tailbone, angling the hips. We just have to be equally careful that we don't over rotate and have this slant and a slipping angle. So we don't want this action. It's exaggerating, of course. And we don't want this action too much the other way. We want to counter the weight of the arms, especially it's going to be even more pronounced up here. Counter the weight by angling the hips, but we want to make sure that we haven't slipped into a tuck or into a pelvic tilt. So if you feel that your tailbone, your hips are pretty much vertical, and then going any more would be tilting forward, but you're still feeling a strain here, then you take the rest with your legs. You bend the knees. So you take the weight that's out here with a vertical hip and bent legs. Once you have that, release space in the joints. So we'll take what we did in the standing meditation in this different shape, space in the joints. And in particular, shoulder joints, open and release, elbow joints, wrist joints, even finger joints. Imagine space in the elbow joints, space in the wrist joints, little spaces in the bones in the fingers. Allow the vertebrae of the neck to open. Allow space between the lower vertebrae. Hang the hips. Weight pressing into the ground. And by using an expanding bubble and or lengthening, sliding into standing tree. To find a position where the arms can kind of rest on a cushion of energy. And again, allowing space in the shoulder joints, elbow joints, wrist joints, finger joints, putting space in those joints. Hang out and breathe. If you get tired, you can alternate between these two positions at any time. But when you do, just do that through a lengthening or opening or expansive quality and feeling. So you can transition as often as you like. Just make it a nice quality transition. Transitioning energetically in a lengthening fashion, opening fashion. To travel from one position to the other, imagine, feel you have to lengthen, grow and lengthen, expand in order for movement to happen. Extend, expand, lengthen in order for any movement to occur. And you may notice that sinking, whether physically or intentionally, can trigger that lengthening and expansion. Hanging the tailbone even a bit more, hanging the hips even in a more accentuated manner is the engine to drive the arms and lengthen them. Nice, good belly breathing. This is a lot of work, mentally and physically. So nice, good breathing. Practicing opening the joints, practicing lengthening the limbs, lengthening the shape to cause the movement. Countering that weight with a drop of the hips and bend in the knees. Sucking the shoulders down by having the elbows rotating forward. Okay, we're going to go into a Qigong movement, rotating one hand down and rotating the other hand up. This comes directly from the 8 Pieces of Brocade. But I want to take the quality and feeling that we were just working with. So keeping the shoulder joints open, elbow joints open, wrist joints open, continuing to open them, perhaps even the finger joints. And see if you can click into that quality, idea, and feeling. That movement is happening because you continue to expand, open, lengthen. Because you continue to open the joints, expand the joints, and/or lengthen the arms. That's the engine that's causing the movement of the arms. Hang out and breathe, hang the spine. So it's happening through a lengthening process, even if it's just purely mental, purely intentional. Send the mind through the arms, through the joints. Expand the energy through the arms, through the joints, and have the sense that that's pushing your arms. The expanding energy, expanding mind flowing through your arms and joints is pushing the arms through their arc of movement. So it's happening through a process of opening or lengthening or extending or expanding. Have that be the main driver, more so than the muscles. And see what it does for your feeling, what it does for the rest of the body. You might notice it's lengthening the spine for you, correcting the neckline. It's always helpful to release the abdomen. You could always release the abdomen a bit more, right? Open, 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 especially those shoulder joints, at least those shoulder joints. See if you can transfer it to some of the other joints. Try this, the next two or next few movements, emphasize the fingers. The fingers extend, the space and the joints and the fingers are the ones that expand and open, even in the thumbs. So the space between the bones of the thumbs and the fingers, open, open, expand, expand. The fingers lengthen. Just emphasizing, focusing on that for a moment. And of course, when you're doing this on your own, you can either choose or you might be guided intuitively to go to certain specific joints, like we're doing now with the hands and fingers. Maybe take an extra moment when the hands are at the furthest points away from each other. Take an extra moment to allow the shoulder joints to release a bit more and the fingers to stretch a bit more. So pause there. It's not a physical pause, you're not stopping. In terms of time, spend a bit more time, another breath or two, to allow the shoulder joints to open a bit more and the fingers to stretch a bit more before you change directions. And when you do that, when you've expanded a bit more for a few more seconds, use lengthening and expanding to change directions to come back. So don't come back and then start expanding. Use the expanding, lengthening to change the direction to come back. Again, that's very intensive internally, so breathe well. Open, open, open. Open or expand even more to change directions. Allow that to affect your spine. Okay. Good chance you're feeling pretty open and expansive. Let's see if we can take that into a little bit of a Tai Chi movement. So let's see how it looks and feels when you do Parting Horse's Mane. And notice what's transitioned over to this move, some of the qualities and feelings. If you lost some of those qualities and feelings, then bring them back with intention. Slow down, intend those things, bring it back into the Tai Chi movement. Hang the hips to lengthen the spine. Back crown of the head points directly up. Allow that to open the shoulders. Allow the fingers to grow. And the space between the bones and the hands and fingers, they only increase. And don't move ahead of the opening and lengthening. Let the opening, lengthening, expansion feeling through your shoulders, arms, and fingers, let your movement be a little bit behind that. So don't move faster or ahead of or before that opening, extending, expanding quality. So not moving and extending, expanding, you're hanging out from the string, lengthening the spine, expanding, lengthening, and then there's some weight shift behind that. It's a totally different feeling and quality. Remember to lengthen and open on the way back as well. And then pause here at the back, lengthen, open some more before you start the next weight shift forward. Once in a while, remind yourself that you're hanging from the string so that your weight is dropped, you haven't come up. Shoulders are down. Belly might have tightened up a little bit. Release that. So before you go forward, engage the lengthening and extending through your arms, shoulders, hands, fingers, and do the weight shifts behind that. Come back, lengthen those arms and fingers continuously. Sit, hang, open, extend. Of course, switch legs whenever you'd like. Try to keep the open feeling as you switch legs. Before you start, little pause. Get the extension, expansion first before you start to move. Notice the shape of your hands and how they feel. Can you release the abdomen a bit more? Can you allow the shoulder joints to be more open? So coming back, there can be a tendency to curtail or shorten. So coming back, you're only getting longer, only getting more open, more expansive, fingers only getting more open and longer. Hang the hips, stretch the spine, have that sent out through your arms and fingers, and then weight shift is behind that movement and that feeling. Coming back, sends the arms and fingers out even more. Feel free if you have any questions or comments anytime. Let's take this into cloud hands, retaining the feeling as best you can. Cloud hands just with not with any footwork. So feel free to allow it to be very, very slow so you can keep the quality and the feeling. Allow yourself to feel that your arms only get longer. Your fingers only get more open. Hang the hips. Release the abdomen. Allow the muscles to become passive. You are relying on activating the energy, intentional flow, the directional flow. Muscles are soft and passive. Now, without using any muscle effort or minimizing it as much as you can, allow the space between your middle finger and your thumb finger to increase, increase, increase. Not doing it muscularly, just with intention and feeling. The gap between your middle finger and your thumb only increases spatially. Space between the middle finger and the thumb only increases. Hang the hips, stretch the spine, sit the shoulders, open the shoulder joints. The space between index finger and thumb increases, expands. Let that also open up your shoulder joints. One foot in front, stationary, brush knees. Again, the space between the middle finger and thumb only expands. This is called tiger's mouth. Your hand makes a shape like a big, wide open tiger's mouth. Check in with the spine. Check the body. Arms get longer. Fingers get longer. Joints, space in the joints of the hands and fingers increases. And the physical space between the middle finger and the thumbs increases, even as the space in the finger joints increase. Until you get to a feeling that you're not really moving. It doesn't matter if your movement is very small and very little or very slow. The movement is coming from this expansion feeling, this opening feeling, opening the shoulder joints, finger joints, expanding of the tiger's mouth. That expansion is basically what's driving you. The expansion, that lengthening, that opening is what's driving the movement. So stay behind that expansion feeling. Stay behind that expansiveness. Let the movement be slightly behind that rather than moving and trying to catch that expansion. Open, expand, lengthen first. Let the movement come from that, almost like a boat that's moving because the sails are filled with air. Your body, the space between the joints, is the sail. And that expansion feeling, that flowing feeling, that expansion quality, that movement through the joints, the movement that's lengthening the arms and fingers, that's what's moving the body. And the opening of your fingers, the opening of your joints is what's driving that movement.
And so, Brad, can I ask a question about, like, I notice, like, especially as we do this for any length of time, what I'm not necessarily able to kind of distinguish clearly, sometimes it feels almost as if with the expansion, that there's, like, I'm coming in, like, it's hard to tell if I'm rigid or just open. And also it feels like it's not always super happy in the expansion. Different parts of me start to turn up kind of complaints, and then I can get to a new kind of expansiveness, but then, like, I'm finding it quite variable in terms of what I'm feeling. And so I keep kind of flicking my arms to, like, is it my muscles, or like I'm not quite sure what the sensations are.
Okay. That's a great talking point. Well, that's an important thing to bring up. Excellent. So a couple different levels I'll mention with that. If it's feeling it's a little bit of a stretch to the point where maybe I'm a little bit tight, I'm not totally relaxed. So we're not talking about yet where it's uncomfortable. So we'll talk about that next. So that's a really poignant question, because when we get into opening up, stretching, no doubt there's going to be some muscle tension there, either because you're using your muscle to a fair degree or because the muscles are being stretched. So the first thing I want to say is if you feel a little bit of tension there, that's got to happen. There will be. We will just get better and better at releasing that tension, and the body and the muscles become softer and softer and softer as the body conditions and becomes a Tai Chi body. A normal body won't be like that. So it's really important to remind ourselves that there will be some tension there. Try to notice there's some sort of tautness. Not sure, maybe is that because I'm being tight with my muscles, or because muscles are simply being stretched more than what they're used to. That's all okay. Do the best you can. Use the mind, the energy flow, try to make that more and more primary. And don't worry too much about, is there any tension in there? So we say release the tension, don't use the muscles, do the best you can. There's going to be some tension there. It's a process, a developmental process, it's an evolutionary process. It's really a refining process where we're changing the body and its tendencies. So over time, the muscles will become more compliant. The muscles will give up eventually. As we change our mind, change our neurological system, the muscles eventually will be, and the nervous system will eventually be retrained in a different way of using it. Softer, more released muscles, and more activated connective tissue and fascia, and more strong chi flow. That is a long-term process. So release as much tension as you can, and notice the tension that's there, and be totally okay with it as best you can. It's one of those things where there's kind of two things at once in the mind a lot of times. You're trying to, as best you can, focus your attention on the opening, extending of energy, the flowing of energy, and noticing there's some lingering tension there still, but not getting hung up on that. It's totally normal. If it's at a point where it's starting to be uncomfortable, you're feeling a strain or a pull, so that could either be muscular tension, could be an actual muscle knot that's being coaxed and being pulled against its tenseness. You can't force that, so you want to back off a little bit and make the movement a little, make the shape a little smaller, and make your intentional flow just as strong or stronger. So let's say I'm going to here, and I feel really a knot to the point where it's, when I feel tension here, usually I feel tension, but I release through it as best I can. But if it's a point where it's actually painful, and it's kind of, especially if it's a sharp pain, you back off a little bit, but increase the water flow, the water going through the hose, increase the chi flow. Back off physically, but increase the mental flow. Another reason why you might feel a strain is you could be stretching your fascia because it's never been stretched before. And that can even be a sharp pain, often in the armpits. Could be anywhere. But if it feels like a very fine, a sharp, fine pain, that could be the fascia that's being stretched because it hasn't been stretched this way before. So it depends how intense it is. Again, if it's quite uncomfortable, back off physically a little bit so it's more comfortable, and then as best you can, increase the energy flow, increase your intentional flow. If you stay with this discomfort, it'll really work against you. You'll end up trembling and shaking, and you won't have any resources left to really work with it. So Cheryl, if you could just touch upon what I just said, and if it addressed what you're saying, or if there's some lingering points that you're still wondering about.
Yeah, I think, no, because I think what I was noticing is getting some measure of success. Sorry, my cat keeps flopping against the stand because he brought a mouse onto the deck as a trophy while you were answering. So it's dead, thankfully. But just in the process of it, noticing, like initially that felt quite lovely. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, what's, to understand the feeling where I'm particularly feeling it. And I think, knots is probably a good term, um, in the connection and how the arms connect into the spine and sort of between the shoulder blades, really feeling like there's some tensioning, really getting a work with that, not because my arms are back, but just like the expansion starting to really pull the tissues there. Not in a like really uncomfortable way, but it was helpful, I think, to have the discernment of what fascial, like some fascial kind of uh, remodeling kind of tension might feel like, compared to just like I'm mistaking this for I'm really using a lot of muscles. And because it doesn't feel like muscles. Like, I mean, the arms feel very quiet, as opposed to like I, did a couple of bicep things just to like, oh, right, that's the feeling of the muscle firing.
Right.
But yeah, we've been doing these some duration of lengthening work. Like, I think it's getting at different layers of tissues
Absolutely.
in ways that, because we're doing so little, it's like I can't help but notice all the little changes that happen across the duration of the exercise.
Right. So that's really, really good for people to know that those sensations will occur, and it's not necessarily you're using the muscles. And in your case, you're checking and seeing you're not. And so it's those other things that are happening, as you say, accessing different layers of tissue. And so that's all part of the process. Again, if it's ever a situation where it's fairly painful, approach it as if it was an injury. What we say when we have an injury is you make the motion smaller, range of motion smaller, but you do it intentionally. You do the same movement or even increase the movement intentionally with feeling, but physically you reduce it. And then you have energy working through those systems to make it more pliable over time and to work through that. Any other comments or questions in this regard?
I have one that's a little bit different.
Okay.
I was actually getting a really great chi flow, to the point where in the parting wild horses, or actually it was in the brush knee part, the tingle was so strong, it was almost sharp and almost too much.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's because it's still kind of new to me and I feel like hypersensitized to it.
In your hands?
So it was kind of an interesting feeling, and I didn't know if it was because I have maybe too much buildup in the hands and I should have been maybe flowing it through other parts of my body, or if it's just because I'm not used to having that much of a chi flow.
Yeah, it's probably because you're not used to that much chi flow. It was specifically in your hands that had the sharp vibration.
Yeah.
So if that happens again, in fact, you can imagine that happening. What you do, you were right on the mark when you said, send some of that chi to other parts. So what I would do, if I'm imagining that it's getting to the point where it's a bit sharp and uncomfortable, don't stay with that. What I would do is I would send more energy back into my arm, or I send energy, I'll take it from my hand down my body through my legs, so you can disperse it out. So you're right on track with that idea. So these are really important things, because sooner or later, we're all going to feel this or something like this, these things. We'll experience these things for sure. So again, in this regard, if you're feeling, in this case, it happens to be the hands, but it could be anywhere, that's such a strong vibration, something you're not used to, this amount of wattage. So you can, I don't want to say dilute it, you disperse it, you distribute it through more of the body, which is only good. More of the body is getting that strong chi flow. Okay, does that make sense? Or any other comments with that, Sandra?
No, it makes a lot of sense. It feels really cool, but it's, it's, I guess, starting to open up my my awareness to just how powerful this is. Like, I mean, I knew it mentally. I
Right.
didn't feel it before as much.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. So, as is always the case, we want to take this off the Tai Chi mat, off the Tai Chi room, right? Off the Zoom class, right? And so take this in when you're just walking. You can all the things that we did today. Can I open up my shoulder joints? Can I even specifically? Can I do? You can even do tiger's mouth out in the world. No one will notice. It's not that much of a drastic change that people will notice it. But you can physically create that tiger's mouth. Can I separate my middle finger and thumb further, but not do it physically? Do it with intention. And you can walk around doing that, and then have that nice feeling, that nice full feeling, or nice strong flowing. I'm sure all of you feel a strong flow when you do that. Then you can have that, you can direct that through other parts of your body. As you're walking or standing or doing whatever activity you're doing, can I lengthen the spine? Can I drop the hips and lengthen the spine? Open the shoulder joints while you're driving. So take these feelings, these qualities, certainly take the shapes, angles, physically take those shapes and angles into other things. But even more importantly, as you get these feelings, these qualities, these energy experiences, take them into your regular activity. And the more you have experience with these energetic qualities, those energetic qualities, you can intend them. You can turn them on, intend them, and they shape your body and they inform your movement. But first, of course, it's the physical things we're doing first, and then we talk about and work with the energetics. But more and more it becomes the energetics becomes real. Turn them on, poof, like literally you can do the poof. It just becomes intention, poof. One thought, one breath, poof, it's on. The chi bubble's on. That's how it is. And that informs your shape and that informs your movement. So for example, right now, all of you really focus on your hands. I'm not going to do any movements. Just focus your mind into your hands. The feeling has changed, right? The feeling in your hands has changed. Just putting your attention there, right? Just placing your attention fully in your hands has changed the quality of the feeling in your hands. Turn those hands around to face the abdomen. Release the abdomen, physically release, let go the abdomen. Let the abdomen grow larger, let it expand. The feeling in your hands, be conscious of the fact that you're shining that feeling into your dantian, into your core. Let your core release and let it shine back. Hang the tailbone, release the abdomen, expand the abdomen. Let that energetic expansion meet your hands and let your hands meet the dantian. The hands are still radiating. Slide your hands up. Become very conscious of the space between your hands. Push your hands very slowly together and feel what's happening in the space between your hands. In and out a little bit. Now slide your hands over and down again to that ball position and pulse here. Now, very, very slowly, keep that energy bubble out there, but let your hands drift down. Let them slide down very slowly, but keeping the feeling of your abdomen open and out there and the energy open and out there, even as you almost begrudgingly let the hands come down. And notice how you're standing, perhaps very expansive, very open. And maybe just walk around just a tiny bit, keeping that quality. You'll notice that maybe your arms are a little bit further away from your body. That's okay, just reflecting the expansive feeling. But notice your joints, they're fairly open. So before you go out in the day, before you go driving, or when you get up in the morning, you can just take a moment to charge this up. And take that into, it only takes 10 seconds, and then move into your next activity. Again, one physical trigger, tiger's mouth. Physically extend and expand the distance between your middle finger and thumb. And the ensuing energy that comes from that, that's what you want to captivate and then distribute and just encourage that to flow even more. So that's one very handy trigger. Ultimately, we want it to come from the core, or we want it to be universal throughout our whole body. But this is a very, very good and relatively easy trigger. Poof, physically, you just stretch it, and then you feel the ensuing energy. And that's good in itself, but it's even better if you then can get that energy moving more out away from the body, moving more inside the body, maybe down to the feet. Any questions or comments?
What's pretty cool about that, like there's such a well, like you've taught this sort of shape before, but in thinking of it as the relationship and the distance between, there's
Okay.
such a magnetizing feeling of that. And it's reminding me, I had a little non-incident, someone came to my door who, had a different agenda than what they claimed. And the only thing I did was sort of like say, get ready. But as I've been doing this, it's like, that's what I put on, like that was, I wasn't thinking about it, but that's the hand shape. And I
Right.
had such a chi bubble that when I opened the door, he recoiled,
Right. Right.
Um,
Very interesting, because
yeah,
if you think of any athlete or someone who's ready to go, fight or what have you, there's that shape, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So it's a universal shape, and we can use the shape to turn the energy on, or we can use the energy to turn the shape on. Works both ways. So that actually is a very handy thing if you're ever on alert and you're feeling kind of intimidated or a little bit yin, and it's not time for yin, you can just put that shape on, and that can help you get into that stronger flow, stronger quality, stronger presence. So let's finish with just some serving tea, emphasizing that shape. That's a nice movement for this shape of the hand. And even if you start just by physically expanding that distance between the middle finger and thumb, notice what that does for you. Especially, Sandy, if that's still becoming sharp and very vibratory, then dissipate that or disperse it a bit. Maybe release and open the abdomen. Send it through the entire body. Hang from the string. Drop the hips to stretch the spine. Lengthen the arms by opening the shoulder joints, finger joints. Lengthen the legs into the ground. The legs lengthen just like the arms do. Energy legs go into the ground. So the hips drop closer to the ground, and the legs themselves actually go below the ground. Stretching out through the arms, shoulders, fingers. Remember the space between the finger joints. Shoulder joints opening. Hang out, release the abdomen, and notice and enjoy the body. It's open, spacious, joints that are clear and expansive. Feeling that whole shape with your presence. Feeling that bubble or sphere of chi that's through the entire body. Opening the body. And slowly coming back to standing. Slowly pressing the hands, the centers of the hands, Laogong points. Directing those center points of the hands towards the Dantian point. Very slowly. and frame the Dantian. So your fingertips are touching each other and the fingertips are at the belly button. Your index fingers are touching each other, touching the belly. So you're forming like a triangle. And feel the warmth of your hands. The energy of your hands go into your body. And now one hand over the other, one Laogong point over the other. So both Laogong points directly over the Dantian point. As you hang the hips, release the spine. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Long breath out through the mouth, releasing your hands, let them swing just naturally with gravity. Hang vertically straight, space in the joints, feet in the ground. Noticing and watching the hands gently and naturally subside to centered stillness. Being with gravity, watching gravity's process. As you are vertically aligned through gravity. Imagine, speaking of gravity, imagine a waterfall. You're under not a super strong waterfall, but a fairly moderately strong waterfall pouring over you. And your skeletal structure is very bright and clear, upright, vertical. And that water pours through you, pouring the tissues off the bones. Tissues are washed off, poured off. Skin, muscle, everything, all the tissue fascias, washed off the bones until all that's left is a shining, gleaming, vertical skeleton. That waterfall pours down through, around, and in the body, pouring through. Breathe. Allow that pouring. And in the midst of that pouring, the structure is upright, clear, bright, pristine, purely vertical. As the pouring washes through you. Your hands, your torso, through your legs, through your feet. Breathe. Gently rock out. Okay, how do you feel?
That feels pretty good.
Yeah, I feel pretty relaxed. I love that waterfall analogy. That just feels lovely.
Nice, nice. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Fred.
thank you.